How many pieces of clothing do you have in your wardrobe right now? How many times did you open and close that wardrobe this morning? How many times did you say, I have absolutely nothing to wear? How many times did you buy something, get home, and realize it goes with nothing else you own? How many times did you stand in front of something and ask yourself, why doesn't this look right on me? One day I looked at an old photograph of my grandmother. 1956 London, a street in Kensington. Margaret is standing there smiling softly. She's wearing a navy dress, white collar, a single strand of pearls, hair pinned up, heels in place, handbag on her arm. And as I looked at that photograph, I realized that woman had never once done retail therapy. She had never asked, what's in fashion this season? Same woman, same elegance, unchanged for years. When I asked myself how that was even possible, the answer was not money, not a stylist, and not luck. I realized it was hidden in 10 habits that everyone in that era simply practiced, never named, never written into a book, never sold as a course. And in this video, I walk you through every single one of them. When you hear number 4, you'll think, I already knew this, but I'd never once thought of it that way. If you're ready for this journey, subscribe and let's begin. Habit 1. She knew her measurements by heart. 1956, Kensington. 10 o'clock in the morning. Margaret is standing in front of a seamstress. The woman walks around Margaret 3 times, pressing a tape measure to her waist, her shoulder, her hip, noting the figures quietly. Then she hands the paper to Margaret. Margaret puts the paper in her handbag and never looks at it again, because she already knows. 84, 62, 88, not a dress size, real measurements. In 1950s Britain, there was no standardized sizing system. Every shop, every seamstress used different measurements. If you were ordering from the Sears catalogue, you wrote down your waist measurement. If you were buying a simplicity dressmaking pattern, you needed 3 figures, bust, waist, and hip. So every woman knew her own measurements by heart. She could look at a dress on a rail and answer the question, is this worth trying on, in 10 seconds. When I first tried this, I actually took my measurements, memorized them, and walked into a shop. It changed everything. I'm not exaggerating. The guessing game was over, no more buying something hopefully and coming home disappointed. Vanity sizing began in the 1980s. Shops inflated dress sizes to make customers feel better about themselves. A size 12 in 1958 is a size 8 today. The numbers stopped meaning anything. Knowing yourself began with knowing your body, and that knowledge disappeared. Habit 2. The moment she got home, she changed. The very first thing Margaret did when she came through the door was get changed. The navy dress came off. It went on a hanger. In its place came a cotton, simply cut house dress. The kind nobody else ever saw. The kind that was never worn for guests. Set aside purely for being at home. This was not a question of manners, it was a question of protecting an investment. In 1956, a good wool dress cost the equivalent of several £100s in today's money. Wearing it in the kitchen, in the garden, while cleaning the house, meant it would be worn through in 2 years. Simplicity and Butterick dressmaking patterns had an entire separate category labeled house dress. Sears sold them in a completely separate section of the catalogue from street dresses. I tried this for just 2 weeks. I took off my good clothes when I came home. 2 weeks later, I noticed my good clothes still looked good, still pressed. They hadn't faded, they hadn't worn, because I had only touched them when I needed to. Lululemon opened in 1998. By 2015, athleisure was worth $44 billion. The house dress disappeared. Good clothes wore out faster. Nobody called it a problem because the clothes were cheap enough to replace anyway. Margaret's good dress stayed a good dress for 10 years because she treated it accordingly. Habit 3. 1 print rule. Margaret's wardrobe contained 1 printed piece. Everything else was plain. A floral blouse. Beside it, a plain navy skirt, plain black shoes, plain cream handbag. 1 focal point. 1 place for the eye to go. This rule was never written down. Her mother had said it. Her mother's mother had practiced it. Everyone simply did it. Grace Kelly used this instinctively. Look at her off-duty photographs and you'll find almost entirely plain colors. When she wore a printed piece, every accessory disappeared. The wardrobe spoke with a single coherent voice. The 1970s deliberately normalized mixing print with print, pattern with pattern. It was countercultural, a rejection of the 1950s. But from a purely visual standpoint, the eye had nowhere to settle. Margaret always gave the eye one place to go, and you always looked there. Just a moment. If you've been watching this and thinking my mother did exactly that, or my grandmother knew all of this, please do send this video to her or to a friend who struggles with wardrobe stress every morning. Sometimes a reminder is the kindest thing you can give someone. Let's carry on. Number 6 surprised me most of all. Habit 4. She built everything around 2 neutral colors. Margaret's entire wardrobe system was built around 2 colors, navy and cream. Navy skirt, cream blouse, cream dress, navy jacket, navy coat, cream gloves. Nothing in her wardrobe was an island. Everything went with everything. Today, this is called a capsule wardrobe. There are books, Instagram accounts, consultants. Margaret didn't know it had a name. She simply called it a wardrobe. Everyone around her was doing the same thing. The fast fashion industry introduced seasonal color palettes from the 1970s onwards. Each season brought a new shade that went with nothing from the previous season. 2 incomplete wardrobes, both constantly requiring new pieces. Margaret had no trend. She had navy and cream, and everything worked. I applied this myself. It took me 3 full months to rebuild my wardrobe around 2 neutral colors. Now, when I open the wardrobe in the morning, I can take out any 2 things and put them on. Decision fatigue gone. Habit 5. Accessories were the system. Margaret created 20 different looks from 6 dresses. How? Accessories. But not as decoration, as a system. The handbag matched the shoes. The scarf finished the coat. The gloves came off only indoors. Every combination was a complete whole, not separate pieces mixed and matched, but a single considered costume. Jacqueline Kennedy's wardrobe was considerably smaller than history suggests. Her personal secretary Mary Gallagher documented it. Kennedy gave careful attention to accessories, gloves, scarves, shoes, rather than accumulating new dresses. The appearance of a completely different woman at every public occasion was not financial. It was architectural. Margaret had discovered this mathematics for free. Constraint made creativity necessary, and that creativity has since become a skill that people pay money to be taught. Habit 6. Nothing hung in the wardrobe broken. Wednesday afternoon was set aside for mending in Margaret's weekly routine. A loose button noticed on Tuesday was sewn back by Wednesday evening. A dropped hem was back in place by Thursday. Nothing ever waited on a "I'll get to it one day" hanger. This skill was taught in schools. Home economics was a compulsory subject in British schools through the 1960s. Girls learnt to sew, to cook, to carry out small repairs. I counted how many "I'll fix this one day" pieces were currently hanging in my own wardrobe. 7 pieces waiting, and seeing them every morning when I opened the door was leaving a weight on me I hadn't even noticed. I fixed all of them in 1 week. Some took 5 minutes. Margaret never hung anything broken in her wardrobe, because a piece you cannot wear is more than something taking up space. It is a quiet daily reminder that you haven't got round to it yet. Habit 7. She dressed for the body she had, not the body she was working towards. What the seamstress had said at their first meeting had never left Margaret. A-line skirts, fitted waist, never a horizontal stripe across the hip. By the time Margaret was in her 30s, she had absorbed this completely. Nothing in her wardrobe worked against it. Almost every British women's magazine in the 1950s ran the same section: what to wear for your body type. Hair, hourglass, column, each had its own prescription. Waistlines, hemlines, necklines that worked and ones that didn't. This knowledge passed from seamstress to customer, from magazine to mother to daughter, with the same seriousness as a recipe. Fast fashion erased this knowledge, because a silhouette that only suits certain figures sells to a fraction of the market. A trend declared flattering for everyone sells to everyone. Margaret dressed for the body she had, not the body she was hoping for. Nothing hung in her wardrobe waiting for a future version of herself. Habit 8. She asked 3 questions before buying anything. When Margaret saw something on a rail, before she reached for it, she asked 1 question. Does this go with 3 things I already own? If the answer came immediately, she bought it. If it required thought, she put it back. This rule passed from mother to daughter, from friend to friend in a changing room. In the 1950s, women went shopping together. The friend was there to ask the question out loud when you were about to make a mistake. In 1955, a good dress cost £2 to 3 days' wages. If you spent that kind of money on something, it had to earn its place in the wardrobe. The most expensive items in most wardrobes today are the pieces that never get worn, bought on impulse in a moment of trend, that go with nothing else. Margaret never reached for her purse without asking the question first, and her wardrobe contained no strangers. Habit 9. One good coat for a decade. In 1953, Margaret bought a good wool coat, £35. Half a week's wages for the average worker at the time. Before she bought it, she went to 3 different shops. She felt the weight of the wool between her fingers. She checked the seams, she examined the lining, then she bought it and wore it for 11 winters. In 1965, the inner lining was replaced. A few pounds, a few days, and the coat continued. The relationship with an object that cost half a week's wages was different from the relationship with an object that cost £11 on a Tuesday afternoon. One you cared for, the other you lost track of. Fast fashion introduced seasonal coat replacement. Bought in October, worn a handful of times, left behind by spring, the industry did not improve coats. It improved turnover. Margaret's daughter still has that coat. It hangs in a wardrobe in Columbus, Ohio. Nobody has worn it in 20 years. It still holds its shape. Her daughter cannot accurately remember how much she has spent on coats in the last 10 years. Not one of them hangs like that. Habit 10. She stood differently inside the clothes. 1952, Kentucky. Dorothy's mother stood in the kitchen. She straightened her back, chin parallel to the floor, shoulders settled back. Movement from the hips. Then she let her shoulders drop forward, her chin fall, her spine curve. "Look at what the dress does," she said. Same woman, same dress, 2 completely different people. Good posture changes how every piece of clothing sits. The shoulders lie flat, the hem hangs evenly. The silhouette reads exactly as it was designed to read. Margaret never once thought of this as style advice. It was something her mother had shown her in the kitchen. She walked tall for 30 years and never once called it a technique. Today, posture is a wellness trend. There are posture-correcting products, posture exercise programs, choreographed walking classes. Margaret's mother taught it to her in the kitchen in 10 minutes. Look at these 10 habits again. These were simply life. An ordinary Wednesday morning in 1950s London, and this was just how you dressed. Working through this research, I found myself pausing again and again and thinking perhaps the problem was never our taste, our budget, or our bodies. Perhaps the problem is simply that the world around us looks so very different from Margaret's wardrobe. And to change that, we first need to understand what changed. This week, choose one thing from this list. No grand overhaul needed. Try it for a week, then come back and write in the comments. How did you feel? What did you notice? What shifted? If you haven't subscribed yet, please do hit the bell and I'll find you when the next video is ready.